Thank you for tuning into our podcast, Canal Days, What Life is Like in the Industrial Connecticut River Valley of Massachusetts. I am your host, Carrie, and joining us today is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of the historical tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Como. He personally offers and leads public and private tours, as well as presentations of historical sites within communities throughout the state of Massachusetts. Currently, the communities that he has chosen to focus on this year are Holyoke, Chicopee, South Hadley, and East Hampton, and also Granby and Amherst as well. And his tours spotlight on local canals, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, and also parks, streets, and selected historical houses within each community. And in today's episode, we will be discussing Franklin Street in the community of Holyoke, Massachusetts. So, in general, what is Franklin Street like?
Franklin Street is a street that goes from east to west, and it's a two-way street on this whole length. It's a street that has a lot to it, and there's lots of changes to it. And we're going to talk about what it may look like in the long past and what it looks like today. Nowadays, there's a Rohan Park on there, and in this year, 2024, I'm going to have a tour on Franklin and Sargent Streets that are around Rohan Park. So you get to see what those streets were like in that region. That is a former trolley sub-neighborhood, and for that reason, it sees lots of changes. When the trolley went by, things start to happen because you have the opportunity to get people in and out of places where they couldn't before, and it really develops a character. And also we're going to talk about the area around the end of the canal system and how it compares to other streets.
And what is the area around Rohan Park like?
Okay, this area is pretty nice looking. They put a school in to that section near the end section of Franklin Street, and it was called Kirtland School, and they put it in place in 1909, and believe it or not, the nearest house was like 200 yards away, and then if you keep going on Franklin Street to the east, you would find less and less houses. So Franklin Street was just developing as a neighborhood, and so they put a school up there. But again, they realized what was happening. There was a trolley line going by. They realized trolleys mean a trolley neighborhood that's coming in, and you need a school, right? Plus, they needed schools anyways at that point. Some of the other schools, the very, very old schools, were getting too old, and so they wanted to put schools in to draw people into that new school and be ready for them. For instance, the South Chestnut Street School and the Sargent Street School were getting kind of on the old side, maybe about 50 years old, and they realized someday they're going to have to replace it. And to replace it, they did. They named Kirtland School after the superintendent that had stayed around Holyoke for about 20 years, from about 1870 to 1890s or so. All right, now also around Rohan Park, there's a lot of houses. There's one really nice house on Pinehurst that was owned by James Newton, and he's the one that divvied up all the land out there in the Oakdale neighborhood, but on the western section where it was not owned by Orion Allen, it was owned by Newton, and he divvied it up at a slow pace, and so houses went up. They were much more interesting than Orion Allen because he tended to make houses that were very similar to each other. All right, so this neighborhood has a lot of character, and it's given Franklin Street, for that reason, a lot of character to it.
And really quick, before we continue with our interview, just to fill our listeners in, to find out more information, or if you are interested in signing up for any of his various tours, check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org, and there you can find videos and podcasts of the stops along each of his tours, as well as photos and text of the historical sites as well. And for private tours and other inquiries, you can email him directly at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. And his tours make for fun, educational outdoor activities for families and group parties. So getting back to our interview, what is the eastern end of Franklin Street like?
All right, Franklin Street is on its eastern end very different from that on its western end. And for that reason, it's going to be quite a different thing, they say. Now, I forgot to mention Rohan Park in this neighborhood is going to be on Saturday, May 4th, 2024 at 11 a.m. in the last 1 hour. And you're going to meet the Sargent Street side of this Rowan Park. Now, Franklin Street, when I say Franklin Street, that includes West Franklin Street, and the part of where Rowan Park is West Franklin Street, right? And it didn't quite exist that way until there was drastic changes made within Holyoke. So Franklin Street, once it crosses where Beach Street is, it turns into, for a very short time, Resnick Boulevard. And to get back onto Franklin Street, the best way is to get onto Jackson Street for about 40 feet, and onto Elm Street, and then travel to the north, and then take a right on Franklin Street. And you're in the middle of where there used to be a Jackson Street Parkway, but now it's the Churchill Homes. And in this area here, all of a sudden you see a drastic difference to Franklin Street. It's not continuous anymore, and it's also, it's lost, all of its very old apartments called the Jackson Street Parkway. And as you go along it, you'll see drastic changes also because it's alongside of the Sacred Heart Church, which is probably going to come down soon too. And then as you travel more, crossing High and Maple Street, for instance, and you go along towards Commercial Street, Franklin Street is not one of the streets they go through at all. So there's a drastic difference from West Franklin Street, which is very residential with a park, to Franklin Street, which is not continuous with West Franklin anymore, but it used to be. And it's also a shortened street there, which has lost a lot of its institutions and its structures.
And how does Franklin Street compare to other streets in Holyoke?
Okay, its western edge probably compares very well to other streets because it's very residential and it's very pleasant to drive down there. There's, of course, that Rowan Park, which is very nice. But once you get down to its eastern end, East Franklin Streets, it's not nowhere near where it used to be. And there's going to be even more deserted structures, and the whole city block is going to be almost gone. So it's really changed. And it doesn't keep going like a lot of the east-west streets. It actually comes to a shortened stub off of Commercial Street, ends right at a mill called the Berkshire Yarn Company, and that's it. It's done with. So there's some good comparisons in some other ways, no.
And thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours and historical topics of your expertise. And thank you to our sponsors. And of course, we want to thank our listeners for tuning in. And check out a large selection of our other podcasts at his website, as well as on SoundCloud.com. And be sure to stay up to date with new podcasts and videos posted daily. Thank you, and hope you join us again. Thank you for tuning into our podcast, Canal Days, What Life Was Like in the Industrial Connecticut River Valley of Massachusetts. I am your host, Carrie, and joining us today is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of the historical tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Como. He personally offers and leads public and private tours, as well as presentations of historical sites within communities throughout the state of Massachusetts. Currently, the communities that he has chosen to focus on this year are Holyoke, Chicopee, South Hadley, and East Hampton, and also Granby and Amherst as well. His tours spotlight on the local canals, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, as well as various parks, streets, and selected historical houses within each community. And in today's episode, we'll be discussing Jackson Street, located in the community of Holyoke, Massachusetts. So, in general, what is Jackson Street like?
Jackson Street, its western edge has been taken a bit out. It used to extend all the way to Beach Street, but now you have to get on Resnick Boulevard and cut in. And that's because in 1981, Interstate 391 was added to Holyoke, and it had to change that section around quite a bit. Now, what we're going to do today is talk about what was on this street in the past, including down by the mills and canal, including up by Jackson Parkway, and then what will probably happen. But in the past, it was along a park called Elmwood Park. So it formed a perimeter towards the northeast around this beautiful park that was a mile long. So you can get off of Beach Street and turn on Jackson. You're still born in this big park. That park is mostly gone, but Sherrod Park is there as one of the pieces. Other pieces are Mackenzie Field, Crozier Field, so forth. So the street has changed drastically, but it's still a combination of residential, and then it starts to pass by the upper mills near the first level canal, then some of the lower mills in the second level canal, and it goes to the third level canal. So it's one of only two streets in Holyoke that passes by all three canals, with the other one being Cabot Street. I'm sorry, also Sargent. So there's three streets that do that. So Jackson Street has drastic changes as you go along, and that's very unusual.
And what is the Jackson Parkway?
That was near the western edge or start of Jackson Street. It was a residential neighborhood. It was taken out in the name of urban renewal about early 1980s and replaced with modern houses. And the amount of people that lived there was much higher in the past compared to now, because now the houses are spaced further apart. So you get more playground area and backyards. But the Jackson Parkway area was 100 years ago was where a lot of mill workers would have lived. And then it changed over to low-income housing. And then it changed into this modern rendition. So to really understand what Jackson Parkway was, you're going to have to look at pictures. It looked like row houses back together and fairly close together, even though there's only one or two streets around it, and you would have a lot of alleyways and private roads going between them.
And really quick, before we continue with our interview, just to fill our listeners in, to find out more information, or if you're interested in signing up for any of his various tours, check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org. And there you can find videos and podcasts of the stops along each of his tours, as well as photos and text of the historical sites as well. And for private tours and other inquiries, you can email him directly at bobcat4214B@yahoo.com. And his tours make for fun educational outdoor activities for families and group parties. And getting back to our interview, what is Jackson Street in South Holyoke like?
This is where it goes by the mills. So between the second level canal down to the third level canal, you start to get mills along this place, including the old Parsons Mills on one section, the Dickinson Mills, so forth. And then down toward the very, very end of it, you meet up with the chemical paper company made by the Newton family, also the Newton Mill made by Moses Newton, and then also you start to see the Union Paper Company off in the distance, but you see the curve of this third level canal coming inwards. And so this street, like I told you, you get to see all three level canals. You can stop at each one and see the differences, and you get to see a lot of different mills along the way. And so this is the part of Jackson Street that is very heavily industrialized. You can imagine how much activity there was from 1880s into the 1930s in that location. It must have been incredible. Workers going everywhere, mills very active. These are the big heavy-duty mills. They weren't the fiber mills, so the great bulk of workers were in the fiber mills, but these are more paper mills. But they still had lots of activity, the trains and trucks going everywhere. So this used to be an extremely busy street, whereas now it's not so busy anymore. It's kind of away from downtown, and so it doesn't get the use it quite used to have.
And what will the future be like for Jackson Street?
Well, I hope that the canal walk at some point reaches up to Jackson Street. Phase 1 and Phase 2 are completed on the canal walk, and Phase 3 is going to go from Race up to Cabot towards Willamette Bridge. But I hope a Phase 4 starts to go in the direction of Jackson Street, so that it too can have a lot of activities along it. It's kind of bland and it's kind of slightly dirty at times, but if it gets fixed up, it can be a very nice place. It can be as gorgeous as the other places. Now, in terms of how sure there's empty spaces around, I bet you at some point stores, institutions, and homes can can move into this area, and you can start to have a lot more activity. So this is a place open for more development in Holyoke.
Thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours and historical topics of your expertise. And of course, we want to thank our sponsors as well. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. And check out a large selection of our other podcasts at his website as well as on SoundCloud.com. And be sure to stay up to date with new podcasts and videos posted daily. Thank you and hope you join us again.